Greetings and welcome to our breakout session titled What Worked, What Didn't, Outreach and Interventions During COVID-19. This session is brought to you by Benetech, a technology nonprofit funded by the Office of Special Education Programs and the parent of the Bookshare online library. In this session, we set out to share the impacts of COVID-19 on our work with teachers, parents, and students with learning differences and our response to it. As a quick introduction, my name is Mario Oliveros, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Marketing at Benetech and Bookshare. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin by setting the stage, and this is a stage we are all very familiar with. COVID-19's impact on education has been profound. There are countless studies and stories about school closures, absenteeism and quarantines, staff shortages and teacher turnover, and the impact on student learning and their overall socio-emotional well-being. For Bookshare, the effects were also significant. From 2019 to 2021, we identified a decrease in engagement with our members and visits to the Bookshare online library, as well as the downloads of ebooks in accessible formats that we provide and that are critical to student learning. In one word, the impact was a disconnection between students and the people who support them, and the resources like Bookshare that are critical to helping students to read and learn. Before we move further, it's important to understand what Bookshare is, who we serve, and how we help. Bookshare is a free ebook library funded by the Office of Special Education Programs. We provide a critical learning service to students with disabilities who cannot read traditional books. We remove reading barriers by providing ebooks in alternative accessible formats that make reading easier. With Bookshare, students can read in ways that work for them by listening to books in audio, following along with synchronized karaoke style highlighting, reading in large font or braille, and having the ability to customize their reading experience, be it with colors, background, reading speed, and voices, and a bunch of other elements that allow students to personalize their reading and learning experience. You can read on almost any device, including computers, Chromebooks, tablets, smartphones, assistive technology devices, and now with our recently released Bookshare Reader app on the Alexa smart speaker, which is super exciting. Across the US, over 800,000 students with disabilities access Bookshare in over 45,000 schools, and collectively, they have downloaded over 9.5 million ebooks from Bookshare. Bookshare is completely free for schools and students with qualifying disabilities. Members get access to millions of books in multiple accessible formats, including textbooks and educational titles like Lexile, leveled readers, NIMAC textbooks, and the Common Core, as well as the popular children's and young adult bestsellers that their friends are reading, college prep, and a wealth of books for life after school. In addition, we provide the free reading apps that students need to read on whatever device they choose. It's important to note that to join Bookshare, a student must have a qualifying disability that includes learning disabilities, visual impairments, and physical disabilities that make reading either very difficult or impossible. With that as background, how did Bookshare respond? Bookshare's strategy to COVID-19, and in particular, the Omicron surge at the end of 2021, can be summed up in one word: reconnection. We aim to reconnect with the students, teachers, and parents across the country who had been disconnected from the books and resources they need to read and learn. We designed a digital outreach campaign for the winter and spring, and we sought to leverage best practices in marketing outreach and new approaches used by other nonprofits who impress and inspire us. So let's take a look at the campaign. And I want to begin with a quote. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It's a quote that we're all familiar with, very popular in physics and in literature, and speaks to the role and importance of awareness. If people are going to avail of your service, they first need to know that you exist. And that's where we began. We sought to build awareness with teachers and parents and students across the country. And we did it with an approach that we've refined over time, where we use different channels to reach a wide audience and to identify the channels that work best. And to give you a sense of what those included, there were email marketing, where we rented lists of teacher and school emails. We sponsored content on a popular educational community. We leveraged social media to put our content in front of teachers and parents when they use Facebook. And we leverage Google search so that when someone searched for dyslexia resources, audiobooks, books in large print, our content was put in front of them. So how did this approach work? Well, we were able to reach a lot of people. Over 4.8 million teachers and parents saw our content, many of whom never heard of Bookshare before. This included over 600,000 emails sent directly to the inboxes of teachers across the country. When parents and teachers were using Facebook, they saw our posts over 2.8 million times. And when using Google to find resources, they saw our search ads over 1.4 million times. So in terms of building awareness and reaching new audiences, a multi-channel approach works. So while reaching millions of teachers and parents is fantastic and exciting, it's also not enough. We wanted to bring the audience closer to Bookshare, to explore it and to consider using it. So we wanted to drive action, and we did that by putting ourselves in the shoes of our audience to think about their needs, wants, and pains. Here's a visual example of some of that tailored content. We have an email on the left side for teachers with a preview of what Bookshare is, who it helps, and its benefits that invites them to explore more, where they go to a landing page that's customized just for them that includes more details, a demo video, examples of books, and a testimonial, and ways to learn more. And we wanted to get as many people to see this tailored content as possible. And the way we go about that is by testing our messages. This is a technique called A/B message testing that you can use for email campaigns, social media ads, and even Google search ads. And the idea is that you have two messages, an A and a B, and you simply see which one performs better with your audience. In this example, we have a direct email that was sent to two audience segments. One were schools that got 50% or more free lunch. The other were schools that got 50% below free lunch. And we tested these two messages, a free message about Bookshare and a secondary message about how Bookshare helps struggling readers' emotional well-being. And interestingly, for both audiences, whether they got above or below 50% free lunch, the emotional well-being message resonated more. And as a result, that's the message that we used more often in subsequent email campaigns. And so as you test and optimize more, the cumulative effect is that you get better performance and more people seeing your tailored content. And here's just an example. When we initially started off with this campaign in February, March, we sent over 100,000 emails and got an average open rate of 1.4% and an average click rate of 0.22%. Historically, at Bookshare, we know that we could get better numbers. So we began to test many different messages and identified the batch that worked better. So when we relaunched this campaign a couple of months later in April and May, here are some of those initial results. With almost 42,000 emails delivered, we doubled the open rate to 3.8% and dramatically improved our click rate to over 2%. So by testing and making these optimizations, we got even more people to see our tailored content. And by increasing the number of teachers and parents who explore and learn more about Bookshare, the greater number of new members we can potentially get. And we give that a big thumbs up. So what were the initial results? They were quite promising. In winter and the first half of spring, we had 484 teachers sign up their schools and multiple eligible students within each school. And we also had 424 parents sign up their individual children for Bookshare. So a great start. But there's still work to be done. The majority of new visitors to your site will bounce. In other words, they won't return and they definitely won't sign up. Even after doing all the awareness building, driving them to take action and getting good initial signups, we know that it can take 3, 6 months, up to a year for someone who's first heard of Bookshare to take that final action and sign up. So what we want to do is to keep Bookshare top of mind and to facilitate their sign up when they are ready. And there are a couple of different ways we've started to experiment to do that. One is by sending automated reminder emails, and we use a tool called marketing automation. This is a great and powerful tool that allows you to create content beforehand and to sequence their delivery. So you can send reminders every week, every other week, or whatever sequence you want. And this is a great way to do all the work up front and to let the system take care of the work ongoing. Another tool that we've been experimenting with is called retargeting. And this is something you have probably experienced on your own. Let's say, for example, you visit the Bookshare website and then leave it. Later on that day, or maybe a couple days later, you are surfing on the web, perhaps looking at financial information on another website, and you see a Bookshare ad. And this is just another great way to keep Bookshare top of mind so that you're not forgotten. In addition to that, we also pilot other high-touch ways to keep Bookshare top of mind by, for example, sending mailers with brochures to leads who we know who have engaged with our content more, or to even follow up with phone calls or support check-ins. So these are methods that we are currently piloting now. We don't have all of the data, so we can't share that. So question mark on whether this is something that has worked, but we do hope to return in the future, and it's something that we think has a lot of great potential. So moving on, we've talked mainly about how we build awareness with people who don't know about Bookshare. But what about all of the existing Bookshare members? In particular, schools that have used Bookshare in the past, but have used them less due to COVID. And we call these stagnant schools. So we took a look at our data from 2019 to 2021 and saw two interesting groups within schools. There were schools who were heavy users of Bookshare before COVID, but then declined. And we called these the download decliners. There were 5,839 of these schools. There was another group that used Bookshare less before COVID and definitely were not using it as much during that time. And there were just over 17,000 of these organizations that we called non-starters. And what we wanted to do was to see whether we could re-engage them with a series of automated email reminders using our marketing automation tool to rekindle their use of Bookshare. And this is something that we've done in the past with varying results. So we wanted to try something different. And what that was to look at the best practices and things that we witnessed other companies use or nonprofits who were really good at connecting with users who hadn't visited or used them in a while. So here is one of the examples of an email to stagnant accounts. Again, there were a series, and this is just one example. But there are two things that I want to point out. First is the tone of the email. One of the observations we made with other organizations was that they used informal or casual language. And in our emails, we used language like, "It's been a while," or "We miss you." And that seemed to get the attention of educators and draw a response. Secondarily, we wanted to encourage interaction with them. And in this email, for example, we asked them to please confirm that they're still at the school and have access to their account. So we give them several options by which they can say they have access, that they need help, that they can't log in, or that they're still there but want to give other educators access to their Bookshare account. And what we saw in this email, and really just across the board with these stagnant accounts, were that the audience took notice. Over 30% of the educators in these stagnant accounts opened their emails, and over 4% clicked. And in general, those are very strong percentages for your internal email list. And even more impressive, if you're talking about a segment of your audience who you might have perceived to be lost or disinterested. So this points to very strong performance. Secondarily, the teachers took action. When we looked at the download decliners, 27% of them downloaded a book after they received these series of emails. So another fantastic result. And the last thing I just want to point out of interest is that we received a high number of bounced emails as well. These are emails that didn't make its way into the inbox of the educators, and points to the potential for things like teacher turnover, which we talked about at the very beginning. So all in all, reaching out to stagnant accounts for us in this pilot was definitely a big thumbs up, and was something that worked and something that we will consider to look at in future campaigns. So at this point, I think it makes sense to take stock and summarize what worked and what didn't. There were many things that we did in this campaign, and what we showed were just some of the highlights. But I think there are definitely some good nuggets that we can tease out. First is that building awareness and using digital channels works, but all channels are not equal. Some definitely perform better than others for different reasons. And as you run campaigns and experiment, it's important to measure and evaluate what works best and focus on those. Secondarily, testing and optimizing your messages works. Using one and done messaging where you just send and go on to the next thing is less effective than running batches of messages and doing A/B testing to see which messages you want to use in the future. Driving your users to action, for example, to sign up works. As you saw in our campaign, our immediate signups were very strong and very promising. But at the same time, most of the people who learn about your service will not convert the first time or return. You need to work and nurture those leads so that they can potentially use your service at a later date. Finally, looking at your existing members, just because some stakeholders are no longer using your service at this time does not mean they're completely lost. But you do need to identify the type of engagement that is going to work. As I mentioned, we've reached out to stagnant accounts in the past with varying results, and in some campaigns that didn't work. But the example that we shared in this presentation was one that worked for us and was very strong. It's the strongest we've done. So there are reasons and there are ways to accomplish this kind of work. So on that note, I want to thank you all for attending today's presentation. I hope that you found it interesting and found some nuggets that might be useful to your organization. So on behalf of the Benetech and Bookshare teams, we thank you for coming. And I've left the URLs for both Benetech and Bookshare on the screen, www.benetech.org and www.bookshare.org to visit our programs. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me, Mario Oliveros. My email is mario@benetech.org. Thank you very much.